Había una vez, ni dos, ni tres, solo una vez. Había una vez, y mentira no es, un cargador de agua que vivía en la India. Y cada día salía con un gran bastón en los hombros y a cada extremo del bastón había un cántaro de barro. Un cántaro de barro a la derecha y un cántaro de barro a la izquierda. Y él iba a llenar esos cántaros de agua para vender el agua en las casas pobres de la ciudad. Era muy humilde, pero muy feliz. Y lo que pasaba es que el cántaro de la derecha era perfecto y transportaba muy bien todo el agua que el cargador ponía en él. Mientras que el cántaro de la izquierda tenía grietas chiquititas, fisuras, huequitos chiquititos por donde filtraba el agua gotas tras gotas. ¡Plich! 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 Y esta situación desesperaba al cántaro de la izquierda, porque claro, miraba a su compadre de la derecha, el cántaro perfecto, el cántaro orgulloso, y él con sus grietas haciéndole perder tiempo, plata, agua a ese pobre cargador. O el cántaro de la izquierda tenía vergüenza, pero la peor de todas las vergüenzas, la vergüenza de existir. Así que un día no pudo más y el cántaro de la izquierda miró al cargador y dijo: perdóname por favor. El cargador lo miró sorprendido y dijo: ¿qué has hecho? ¿Por qué te tendría que perdonar? Perdóname porque tengo grietas y te hago perder tiempo, agua, plata, todo por mi culpa. Perdóname por favor. Cántaro, yo no estoy de acuerdo contigo. Más bien, en lugar de pedir perdón, mira por el camino donde andas, mira todas esas flores. Y el cántaro de la izquierda empezó a mirar hacia abajo y efectivamente, por el camino donde él andaba de costumbre, había un montón de flores de todos los tamaños, de todos los colores. Y debajo del cántaro perfecto no había ninguna flor. Ya ves, cántaro, yo siempre supe de tus grietas, así que las aproveché. He sembrado flores en tu camino para que tú vayas regándolas gracias a tus gotitas. ¿Sabes una cosa? Tanta belleza no hubiera sido posible sin ti. ¿Y sabes otra cosa? A mí esas flores me sirven para decorar el altar de mi maestro. Así que por favor, cántaro, quédate con tus grietas.
Gracias. Thank you, François. Gracias. Voy a presentar a la última persona de este panel. Ella es Lin Hen Chang. Ella tiene una larga experiencia en lo que podríamos llamar la generación de conocimiento para la transformación social. Ella con otros colegas aplica el concepto que también hemos expuesto más de una vez, que es el knowledge, democracy of knowledge, la democracia del conocimiento. Hemos hablado también, y muy rápidamente, de que en toda esta ambición de generar transformación social es igualmente importante el papel de las comunidades sociales, de la sociedad civil y de las instituciones. Lynn va a hablarnos de esto porque ella es she's a feminist popular educator, trainer and facilitator and engaged scholar. Lynn has fostered engagement with communities and regional organizations for over 30 years. And she is in the position to share with us the role of civil society and how to deal and the relationship with institutions. When you want, Leanne.
Gracias, Christina. And Salam Sejahtera to each and everyone. Salam Sejahtera means greetings of well-being to each and all of you. And that's in Malay. I was so taken by Francois' story that I kind of drifted with it and forgot that I have to talk now. Now, to start off with, let me say that there are abundant studies on civil society. There are abundant studies on civil society, abundant theorization from the space of civil society, but unfortunately, very scarcely discerning the role and capacity of civil society as a generator of knowledge. In conventional social research, civil society is the subject, or rather object of study, is the repository of multifaceted studies and theorization. Dominant positivist social science has not recognized civil society as partners in research that is capable of co-creating knowledge as producers of knowledge. However, in the alternative research paradigm, where knowledge democracy is a key tenet, where research has always been carried out in partnership with the people, civil society is partnered as knowledge producers. I want to highlight in this brief intervention that civil society is not only a fertile field constituting various types and sources of knowledge, but civil society is always, all the time, generating really useful knowledge for its various constituencies. And I'm tasked this afternoon to share some thoughts on civil society as a site of knowledge production, and in that context, talk about how within civil society, the expanding concept of knowledge can take place. So to do this, I will briefly level off what is civil society and what we do as civil society and civil society organizations, and very briefly explain how and why civil society is a place for knowledge production, not just a potent research site for academic researchers. And in this context, I will briefly delineate the various forms of knowledge that civil society generate in my own attempts of categorization, and also referring to two specific reference examples of how the knowledge is being generated at both personal and political levels. And finally, if there's time, I would like to put forward some issues and challenges for higher education institutions to consider if it seriously want to engage with civil society, especially to develop genuine partnership to generate really transformative knowledge to redress the kind of societal problems that we have been referring to as the grand challenges. Maybe just for a starter, since we have been sitting down for an hour or so now, let me have a show of hands, your right hand, those of us who are in this conference and in this hall, who are here because we are part of a university setup. Can I just have a show of hands? You are here because you are part of a higher education institution. You are here because you are part of a higher, okay, thank you. Can you just a show of hands again? Just for everybody to look around also, not just for me. Thank you. And for those of us who are here, because you are linked and part and parcel of civil society work, can I just have a show of hands? Can you look around? Sure. There's no right or wrong answer. The right answer is your answer. Can we just see a show of hands for those of us here whom you are here because you are part of civil society? Thank you. And we do see some of us have one foot in the higher education and one foot in civil society, but with our whole heart for social transformation. The term civil society has been heavily contested, but very briefly, I like to refer it as organized activity that is not associated with the major institutional systems of government and business. It embraces citizens mobilizing through values that they share with other citizens and through shared commitment to action with other citizens. Civil society is not defined by the few registered organizations, but by people's and society's ability to express itself and work for its own future. And in this case, then, civil society organizations encompass grassroots organizations, citizens' movements, trade unions, cooperatives, NGOs, professional associations, faith-based organizations, labor unions, and so forth. They are not necessarily formally registered, but are defined by citizens' self-collective organization that give voice to various sectors of society and enable public participation in democracies. Civil society, whether they are organizations or communities, have their main objective in the improvement in the lives of the poor and disadvantaged, and they are created in public interest. From here, we can see that the civil society sector is not only emerging as a clear societal actor in all parts of the world, it is also quite varied in its nature and composition, and its role in fostering or deterring social change. Not all so-called civil society organizations are pro-social change. Like, for example, in my country, we have the activist, change-oriented women's organizations like Sisters in Islam, who struggle to reinterpret religious teachings to move towards gender equality and for transformative change. And at the same time, we have what have emerged, very reactionary, obedient wives clubs who advocate that women must obey and do whatever their husbands tell them. So these are some of the contradictions in the kind of civil society that we have. The range of work that is carried out by civil society organizations are also very varied. From activist, change-oriented transformational work, there are organizations that claim to be civil society organizations that are important actors for the delivery of social services and implementation of diverse developmental programs to complement state agencies. Perhaps the recent visible case of CSO involvement in post-disaster relief that has occurred in Asia during the post-tsunami reconstruction after 2006 is exemplary. Civil society influence is not only on the local national scene, but have shaped global public policy and action actively over the past 2 decades. This dynamism is exemplified by successful advocacy campaigns around issues on banning of landmines, debt cancellation, environmental protection, which have mobilized thousands of supporters around the globe. A recent manifestation of the vibrancy of global civil society is the World Social Forum, which has been held annually since 2001 in different continents and has brought together tens of thousands of CSO activists to discuss global development agendas. Another example of the vibrancy and importance of civil society is the Global Call to Action Against Poverty, an international civil society campaign advocating for debt relief, greater aid to poor countries. The next part that I'd like to very briefly comment on is how and why civil society is a generator and repository of a variety of knowledges. We all know that civil society itself is a contradictory receptacle that is always immersed in constantly making sense of its complex, contextualized, changing realities. And in that context, it is constantly engaged in changing lives and communities, developing strategies of action for change, for protection, for survival. Given the constant flux of change and action, irrespective of whether it is for struggle or survival, livelihood and organizing, civil society is a constant boiling site in generating experience, insights, and knowledge. Indeed, civil society is the repository of accumulated collective knowledge from lived experience and respective action. I will, how much time do I have, Christina? 6-7 minutes. Okay, 6-7 minutes. Okay, I'm going to leave out. It's very simple to understand that why civil society is a base of knowledge and it's also a base for generating knowledge. Now, I want to move on very specifically to what kind of knowledge can be generated from civil society. Where are the sources or domains of knowledge creation? Very simplistically, I have categorized 4 arenas. The first arena, where civil society members themselves are constantly generating knowledge for themselves, comes from the whole area of our personally lived experiences, from our own personally lived experiences. The second category is about life and living. And this embraces all forms of life, including the arts forms of life, including the physical embodiment of the body. And the third arena is the arena of practice, of action, which we always refer to as practice knowledge, as activist knowledge, as knowledge in action, knowledge for action, and knowledge as action. And the fourth area for me is about knowledge for visioning and envisioning, knowledge to aspire, knowledge to inspire, and a knowledge to be able to dream. So these are the range of knowledge. In terms of practice knowledge, there's always the knowledge that's developed from struggle. I'm going to give 2 concrete examples of knowledge generated. One is working directly with women in terms of knowledge from lived experiences. And the second example is knowledge generated from social movement. I'm going to do this because of the time very, very briefly. The area that I want to highlight about knowledge generating from lived experiences, especially the lived experiences of women, they're experiences that are often seen as invisible, even unspeakable, the repressed pains, the kind of subordination that they experience. And in this context is the epistemology of women's narrative knowing. Women's storytelling sharing is not just narrations of happening. They carry transformatory potential of lived experiences. I will not go into the process, which actually I have prepared, but at some point, maybe through the time during the question, we can talk about it. How through that process of storytelling, reflecting, and using a process of reflectivity, women not only develop new knowledge, but new insights about their unspeakable pains, about their repressed experiences. So that's the whole area about lived experiences. And lived experiences can also extend into activist lives, into the lives of activism. The other area that I would like to highlight is about knowledge from social transformation, knowledge from social movements. Social movements is an arena for knowledge production. And there have been systematic attempts to develop knowledge from the action of social movements. I would like just to summarize here what are some of the experiences of knowledge that has been focused on. A very important area, especially from the feminist movement, is about feminist social epistemologies that look at sexist and androcentric biases. And with that kind of lens, not only do we get improved, expanded knowledge, but alternative ways of producing knowledge. Within that context too, we also talked about situated knowledge, how the social location of the knower affects what and how she knows. There is also the perspectival differences stemming from one social location. In fact, social location offers the potential to be more epistemologically reliable than others. Within that context too, there's gendered knowledge, the role of gender in knowing, and the role of gender in not knowing. Another important area is women's knowledge of their bodies. I'm not going to elaborate here, but finally, a very important area is about transformative knowledge, knowledge that can be used to expand democracy and contribute to social change. It is this knowledge that may be created by men and women at the heart of a social movement, working together without any reference to academic knowledge. It could be knowledge created when community groups and academics work together in co-constructing an understanding of reality so that they can move into action for change. I'm not going to spend time talking about some of the issues and challenges for higher education, but just highlight 2 key points here that I talk about, that higher education as individuals and institutions need to honestly grapple with why they want to be socially engaged. They need first to undertake their own reflexive processes of learning and experience how insights and knowledge can be generated from their own lived experiences, be it personal or professional or political. I want to advocate here higher education institutions with its relatively well resources create spaces for community scholars, create spaces for activists to develop reflexive knowledge from their experiences. And we can develop this a bit further, how that can be done. In conclusion, I would want to highlight that the issue here is not only about expanding and creating knowledge. We need to be constantly asking fundamental questions of what kind of knowledge needs to be created, for what purpose, how is that knowledge to be used, for whom, and in what ways are we going to use them. The goal here is not to develop epistemic practices that we don't simply generate an abundance of knowledge, but we generate sound and ethical forms of really useful praxis knowledge that attempt to redress inequalities and injustice among us. Likewise, it is not just to engage. We can engage to foster lots of participation and solve problems for only incremental change without addressing the basic unequal structures and relationships. How do we ensure that our engagement, that the knowledge created is transformative? And what does it mean to be transformative? Here, I'd like to propose that we move from social engagement to transformative engagement to evoke the transformative potential in our own individual selves, in our relationships, and in through what we do, and in the process, generate really useful reflexive knowledge, not just reflection, but really reflexive knowledge to guide ethical actions for change. And in this, commence and connect with our own personal and collective reflexivities as the starting point in constructing transformative knowledge for personal and political practice. This in itself is expanding the conception of knowledge. Thank you.